Hello, good morning, and welcome to Debating Europe's panel here in the European Parliament about engaging young people in European politics. My name is João I'm the editor of Debating Europe, and joining to me today are a panel of esteemed guests. We have João Mourato Pinto, president of the Erasmus Student Network. Next to him is Giuseppina Tucci, Secretary General of the European School Students Union. To my left is Brems, who is communications at Coca-Cola Belgium. And to the left of her is Lambert van Nistelrooij, who is a member of the European Parliament with the centre-right European People's Party. So this is the second of two debates that we've been having on youth engagement. This is in the context of the run-up to the European Parliament elections. And we took 2 weeks ago we had the first debate, and we took some of the questions and comments that you sent us in, and I'd like to put them today to the panel. I'm going to start with a question from Marco that was sent in. One of the things that came out of the first discussion was about alternative ways of engaging with politics, about young people tend not to vote. In the 2014 European Parliament elections, young people were least likely to vote of all the age cohorts, despite being overwhelmingly more pro-European in their approach, according to polling. And so the argument is, well, young people engage in other ways. They go on street movements, they go on protests, they engage online and so on. The question from Marco, to kick things off, is quite skeptical of that, I'm afraid. He says politicians turn a deaf ear to street demonstrations. We saw it today with the EU Copyright Directive. Months of protests in the streets and on the web, appeals by leading experts on the subject to get what? Nothing. Giuseppina, I'll start with you. So young people have to vote. Street demonstrations and alternative forms of engagements isn't a viable approach. What would you say to Marco?
Well, I do agree with Marco. Sometimes demonstration might not be the only way. Sometimes you have to go out and vote. Sometimes you have to use all your possible voting situations. You can use your school, you can use your municipality, you can use different levels of voting that can help you make a change and an impact. I would still say that demonstrations do have an impact sometimes. We saw it with the climate change marches, with the Fridays for the Future. They are making the politicians switch on their ears a bit more and change their attitudes towards listening more actively to young people. But yes, going out and vote is important because the constituency that we can vote for is obviously different from the one that other people would vote for. So if we want young people in politics, and if we want young people to listen to other young people and to make a positive impact, then obviously we need to go out and vote for them. We need to be the first ones running for elections, and I think this is also a comment that Marco said. You should put yourself forward and run for the elections. Might be a not very positive experience for the first times, but it's obviously the best way to go forward.
Okay. João, the same question to you from Marco. Street protests are a waste of time. What do you think?
No, I don't think they're a waste of time because they put the topic on the agenda, right? So we saw with the climate strike how much that is now part of the agenda, and how many even companies are trying to surf that wave and promote themselves as good practitioners also when it comes to climate change. But I think that from Marco's comment, I take one important note, which is there is probably a lack of tools to track the policies that are implemented at the youth level. We see that there are a lot of documents, there's a youth dialogue, there's a ton of initiatives to consult young people and to transform those concerns into recommendations. However, I personally lack, and I think Marco as well, lack tools to concretely see how those recommendations become a reality. I actually brought with me the recommendations from the EU Youth Council from 2016 in Slovakia, and 2 years later the same recommendations from the one in 2018 in Bulgaria, and we can see that many are actually very similar. There was no progress in 2 years. But in these 2 years a lot of things happened with Brexit, with all the populism, and we just see that there's no accountability and there's no tracking. So we need more tools in that regard, I believe. Okay, so it's about we're in the 21st century. It's about the kind of tools that we use. We need to have a sort of 21st century democracy. This actually is links very nicely to the next question, which was sent in from Alain, who says the EU needs to strengthen alternative forms of political engagement. Young people will forever be outvoted by an aging population at the ballot box, so there needs to be an alternative channel for young people to participate, including direct democracy tools. So
democracy needs new tools. Lambert, what would you say to this? This is something again which came up in the first debate. Do you think that that young people, we are facing a demographic shift, an aging Europe? Do you think young people risk kind of being disenfranchised almost because they're forever going to be outvoted by an older?
It's also a big chance because we need every youngster in our economy, in our society. But let me say first that I see a much more participative democracy. There is more than just election, than standing on a list. And if you see what we did here in the parliament is we enlarged the Erasmus program. We enable young people to travel to Europe and to do something after that they finish their secondary school. So there are a lot of initiatives, but this is not enough. I think that we have to invest more in, let me say, better communication in a way that we listen much more in a younger age, that we do much more with schools. And I participated in a lot of these examples, like debates on politics, and I don't agree that youngsters are not interested. This is not the case. Maybe we have to act different.
If I may add,
Please.
I think we were talking about the climate marches and the demonstrations. I see that as well as a positive sign, because it means that youngsters are more and more interested in politics and they want to show their implication. And it at least from a personal perspective, I think voting will increase. I mean,
yes.
It must. If they're on the street, I really hope everybody's gonna vote in May. From a company perspective, we did some research towards Generation Z and their behaviors or their opinions versus the EU, and we see that they are interested in politics, and 6 out of 10 thinks voting is important, and they also say in that research that they will that most of them will, or more of them will come and vote this time. So I think I wouldn't see it as negative, as you put it, because it's a sign that people are engaged, that they want their voice to be heard, and they're looking for alternative ways. I agree, but on the other,
I'm going to be more negative, I'm afraid. So I'm going to add a bit more negativity, and I'd love some optimism from the panel. I hope you do push back. So this is from David, who said us. So you raised the issue of climate change, and this several readers sent us in this as one of the most important issues that they're concerned about. David says the United Nations says we have 12 years to limit a climate change catastrophe, so young people don't have time to wait until they get older. They need to be given a political voice now. Helene adds, the most important thing the EU can do for its youth is by spearheading an effective global response to climate change. So is there time? I mean, if we have 12 years, the UN's coming out with a report saying we have 12 years to kind of mitigate catastrophic climate change. Is there time to kind of, for the street protests and so on, to work their way through? Do we not need to find ways to give young people a voice as soon as possible?
I think there is. I mean, the time is now, right? There's not much time left, but the elections are also now. So, I mean,
put two and two together.
Put two and two together, and I think we as youngsters need to take our responsibility and vote. And give the power to the people we believe in.
Yep.
And I think we want to see more young people represented. So, I mean, put everything together, and it's really a crucial year for all of those important debates. And I really hope that everybody will take their responsibility, both on political side, but also on the personal side, right? I mean, it's us who are being represented, so we need to step up and really be involved.
And Giuseppina, this is what happened in the US in the midterm elections. Midterm elections traditionally have a very low turnout, but younger people went out and voted. They voted because they're angry with what's happening, so they did actually reserve. So do you think in the upcoming European Parliament elections we could see a reverse of this trend that's been going on since the first elections? Young people could come out and vote.
I do hope so. On the other hand, I see that in the midterm elections what happened in the US was that the candidates were also way different. They were more young and a new face to politics. What we have right now is the problem that young people do not trust what they put in the ballot box to then be really implemented in the chambers and in the plenary room here in the European Parliament and anywhere in the small committees. I think the issue is exactly that as João also was saying before, we have no tools to make our politicians accountable, to hold them accountable to their actions, and to say, like, this is what you committed to during the elections. We are the generation that trusts politics probably the least. So it's not, we don't go out and vote, but we take the streets simply because we believe in ourselves more than we believe in who we vote for. And I think that's where the issue is, that also the names in politics stay very often the same, the tools stay the same, as you also mentioned before. So the willingness to go out, vote, and make a change is always less and less. And I think this is the key issue to tackle. And I think the power of, that is sometimes also undervalued, is the power of youth organizations or us, like school student organizations, that what we can actually do to achieve this impact and to make young people realize that politics is also very positive things, and is also the very positive cooperation that we do have with the European Parliament on certain matters. So there is a bit of a lack of trust from the constituency to the politicians, and a lack of trust from the politicians to the civil society organizations, which is a bit scary from my perspective. I think we can all build a very strong coalition on this.
I'm going to put to Lambert, I'd like to put the first point that you made was that in the US midterms, young people were inspired by younger politicians. So I'm going to put it to you, Lambert. Is it on political parties and groups to put forward younger candidates? Is that something to inspire?
Absolutely. This is a part of the whole approach. I did 3 periods here in the Parliament. I will be succeeded by a guy in his early 30s. And I think it's important that we also give them the opportunities, also in the work, when they are elected, to give them important reports in important negotiations, and not to stick as the generation who did it in the past, like it was done in the past. So new methods, but let me make a fundamental remark. When I look to Europe, I see that parts of Europe, in Poland, in Hungary, in Romania, they are losing the young people. Young people are attracted to my country, to Germany, to Netherlands, and we have to look deeper. There is something needed, like some solidarity, because if you stay in the village and all the young people go, and there is no care, nothing that you really say, is this the promised Europe in the village in Poland? Right. You're going to be very conservative.
Yes.
You're going to take it back. So it's also the participative Europe, as I said, is also of having the voice of youngsters here and there. Also solidarity between generations. We have 2 people to pension in the next 30 years, 1 youngster back.
Yes.
So we need all the young people, as I said before. So it's not just get them to vote, no, get them in full society.
Well, this is exactly a point that was sent in by one of our readers. So emigration, a YouGov poll was carried out recently in many EU 28 countries and showed that emigration is one of the biggest issues for many voters in Eastern and Southern Europe. I mean, in Eastern Europe, there are predictions that by 2050, up to 20%, 10% of the population could have emigrated, or there could be a decline of 10% of the population, which is massive. You know, Latvia and Romania are leading some of in the world in terms of shrinking populations. So the question then comes from Juthuk, which is, I think, a username, I presume it's his username, who said it's talking about housing prices, but it's also really talking about investment in regions. He says young people cannot afford house prices in some areas, therefore governments should use policies to distribute social and economic activities more evenly across European regions. This is a matter of regional development, including infrastructure investment. Now, this is something the European Union can do, right, to spread out economic activity across the EU.
Yeah, this is something that's not just a program spending some money. No, it's a goal of the Union. It's in the treaty exactly. Social cohesion, economic cohesion, territorial cohesion. This is a goal of the Union. And in fact, we spend 1/3 of our money in regional and urban development programs. And the housing point is essential, because in one side you see economic growth getting more and more expensive to get something in the part of the city, in the center of the city, and there they push away people with lower income. So this is very concrete, and this is what we do together with the member states and the responsible people in the cities and the non-governmental organizations. There we are again. You should be heard. Absolutely.
Yes. But is it enough? Because you talk about a third of the EU budget, but that's sort of 1% of European Union GDP. And the numbers that we're talking about, 20% of Romanians, a decrease of population by 20% in Romania and Latvia by 2050. These are huge amounts. Do we need more investment? Are the numbers enough?
I think that we have to think where we put our priorities. It's not just the money, as you said.
Yes.
But think about the bio-based economy. It's thinking about the new energy production. It can be done everywhere. It's not something of the big metropoles or Germany. It can be done in many regions. So to rethink our economy, I visited recently the northern part of Portugal, where you see they had clothes, textile and leather as their main thing, and they shifted the economy to new things like some things like automatization, robots, but also these driverless cars. So the economy should be everywhere, but tailor-made, of course.
Okay,
I think we're missing one important point in all of the debate at the end, which is we talked about NGOs, talked about the European Union. There is the state element in here that we have to address very directly. Of course, we can have all of this money invested in the countries, but at the end of the day, the regional development funds are managed by the states and are allocated by the states. The EU can, however, have legislation that really restringes how the money is spent. We saw with this Juncker plan just a few years ago that restricted the investment in highways, which in my country, Portugal, was just the favorite thing of any national politician to inaugurate a new highway. But we could see that highways do not reach the villages, precisely those villages,
Put the people in the center.
leading to a bigger exclusion. And then we see that the villages vote more on one way than the cities, the urban areas on the other way.
So you're saying it's not about spending more money, it's about spending the money we have more efficiently.
In a smarter way.
Okay.
And not let, if I may be polemical, not let the member states appropriate themselves of the victories of the European Union. That's very important for me. It's very, very easy to cut the ribbon, open a new highway, open a new shiny train station, but omit or just leave it very much in the corner that 80% of that was funded by the regional development funds. I work with European social funds, and many of these people that the social fund addresses, with 100 billion euros in the next program expected to the European social funds,
but
they don't know the money comes from the
That's
European
true,
Union.
but I have here the initiative. We communicate in an old-fashioned, lousy way as the union, engaging citizens, engaging young people. When you talk about a new digital society, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, you know, there is an important role for the next generation. And take the lead, please.
I want to bring in some questions from readers, and these are some specific suggestions that people have made, issues that they're concerned about. Laura, I want to start with you. This is a question sent in from Panagiotis about unpaid internships. So he says unpaid internships should be banned across the European Union. Most companies don't care about the interns, they just keep hiring new ones after the previous internship ends, so that they always have unpaid employees who take care of petty tasks. This is obviously something that a lot of our readers feel very strongly about. What are your own thoughts on unpaid internships?
Well, I mean, everything starts with respect for people, right? And if they're respected, and unpaid internships, I think in certain contexts, they certainly have their use and they can be of value. But of course, people need to be respected. And that's, I think, from our experience as a private company, I mean, we pay a lot of our interns. I cannot speak for other companies, but that's what we do. And I think there's more we can do as the private sector as well. There's programs for youngsters. We can help youngsters make that transition between being in school and starting a career, because I mean, I've experienced it myself. You come from school and you don't have any experience, and everywhere they ask for experience. So how do you bridge that divide?
Exactly.
And that's where companies can really play a role by offering programs where they mentor young people, and it's a win-win because we as a company get a lot back from it as well, because we need the younger generation to be part of the company and to be part of what we're doing, because it's also the audience we're trying to reach. So I think companies can play an important role, and we have a few examples within Coca-Cola. Our bottler Hellenic, for example, has the ambition to reach 1 million young people through a program they've established, exactly offering mentorships, but also offering trainings on business acumen, on soft skills. So those are really examples of contributions that companies can make exactly to solve that issue of bridging between school and career.
Yes. So Giuseppina, so that, would you agree we need to kind of work on the bridge between education and the kind of working world? Is that right?
This is a very controversial question for me. Yes, I mean, for sure, we have to work for young people to secure a job in their life. But we also need to work to secure stable, fair, equal, well-paid jobs. Not necessarily a number of internships, or very often unpaid internships, one after the other, forever, until someone deems that you have enough experience.
Yes.
So this is the one element. The second element is for sure the element of education. Yes, I mean, an internship is an education experience. You use the word mentorship. Yes, if an internship needs to be an education experience, then also education needs to adapt to providing the soft skills in education, in publicly funded education, not necessarily in companies. And education is the state who needs to take the responsibility of educating its young people to becoming active citizens before they become workers.
Right.
This is the first element for me, and this is the element of a quality internship. So the fact that you already have someone backing you up and making sure that there is quality elements. This is the first thing. And then the second thing is really how do we make sure that at some point this internship end? The ferry of internships we receive, we see friends and CVs of people that are 30 and they're at their 5th internship experience, and they keep on going internship after internship, unpaid internship after unpaid internship, and the experience is never enough. So what is the role of Europe in this? Can Europe and can the member states put a limit on the number of internships or number of unpaid internships you need to do? What is the standard? Because I think that's where the frustration of many young Europeans comes from. So, and it's obviously depending on the country. I mean, I come from Southern Europe, so in Southern Europe there is a culture of studying, getting 3 degrees, and after 3 degrees you're not enough qualified. So
you're overqualified.
You're overqualified, but not enough qualified to enter the labor market. So it's a bit
catch-22.
It's a paradox.
So I want to bring in another question from a reader. So one of the frustrations that many people have with the European Union is that it feels very distant, and they feel that they may not benefit from some of the achievements of the European Union, such as freedom of movement, for example. Many people will go on holiday to another EU country, but they may not regularly cross borders. It might be a small number of people who do that. Similarly, most people won't necessarily export to other countries, so the 4 freedoms might not necessarily directly benefit them, even though indirectly they may benefit from them. So one suggestion in terms of widening the benefits of the 4 freedoms to more people was sent in from Rafaela, who says should all Europeans get free Interrail tickets on their 18th birthday? I think that's a brilliant idea. Is that a brilliant idea, João?
It's controversial. We could have a whole debate just on that one. Well, of course, our perspective as a youth organization in the field of mobility is that there must be an educational aspect incorporated into this adventure, let's call it this way. I think that the education aspect is always there in any way due to the informal learning opportunities. So of course, when you go abroad to another country, you're going to contact with a different culture, you're going to meet different people along the way, so there's an informal learning aspect that is part of this experience. However, I do not see yet proper measures in place to properly follow up on this experience. When a person comes back, but I would extend this to all exchange programs out there. When a person comes back from their exchange experience, what is there to make this person reflect on the skills that I got as a personal level, professional level, even as a citizen? Can I bring something? Can I import any practices that I met along the way into my own community, for example, and improve my community through best practice sharing, for example? We need to follow up a lot more on these exchange experiences. Now, Discover EU itself, it's still in the pilot phase. I'm very much waiting to see how in the next program it will be exactly framed. We are now working on this, writing the next program.
Okay, Laura, free Interrail tickets for 18-year-olds. Is this something you would support?
Well, I wanted to jump in on what João said on follow-up after programs, right?
Yes.
I've been on an Erasmus program myself to Paris. It was the best experience of my life. And it made me, in some sort, a fan of Europe, right? Exactly. I mean, it convinced me of the beauty of our union. But there was nothing to to pull me in, or there was no follow-up. And I think that could be a real chance for the European Union to follow up on all of those youngsters who have that experience, who see the benefits of Europe, and what comes next, what comes after. So, yeah.
We conducted a study, let me just say that we conducted a study just a few years ago before the previous European elections. And in this study, it was shown that Erasmus alumni were 3 times more likely to vote in European elections because they felt the EU in a very tangible way.
Yes.
So they understand the need to, well, at least have a say when it comes to the future of Europe.
So Lambert, this is a question which comes from Philippe, who says exactly this: increase Erasmus, Comenius and similar programs budgets. So they're working, do more with the alumni, increase the budget. What would you say?
This is exactly what we voted on and what the Parliament has proposed. So we go in the right direction. But what I learned was exactly what you said. In the UK, young people didn't come to vote. In the UK, no one stood up, for instance, on Liverpool. Liverpool was a neglected city by London and has been recovered and is now a cool and hippie city to go. But no one stood up to show that. And there, this is the point that we have to ask. After that you participated in Erasmus, or you have the support as a startup in your company and later you can grow, that 5 years later we still are in communication with those beneficiaries, citizens, youngsters, whatever, to say, okay, what was the contribution in your personal development or your company development? And this is what we did not need. People follow the union, no, people go in another direction. So there, in this whole follow-up, this will be the biggest investment, and there's both, especially for young people, in their growth, in life, in career, etc., but also for other groups and especially economic partners, that we have to do so. If during the Brexit, the deans of the universities have said, wow, we are in the Horizon program for so many things and we will spoil it, it might have influenced the debate and the outcome. So it is politically, it's not just how to serve young people. No, it's fundamental.
Yes.
And if I can add just
Please.
one little thing, is exactly, and I think João, we back also on this, because something I learned from the experience of ESN is that the important part of mobility, be it with Discover EU, be it with Erasmus or with anything else, is the commitment and the engagement with the local community. And it's the fact that if you just send people on an Interrail ticket around Europe, well, it's amazing, it's an opportunity I also would have wanted, but then what is the actual impact and what is the benefit from the EU in terms of investment in people? But if you send people out with this educational aspect and then you tell them, engage with the local community of the first stop, and you meet the youth organization and you go with them volunteering for 2 weeks, and then you go on your next field trip and you volunteer in another local community, and then that's where you make the impact, and that's what you bring home your personal follow-up, your European follow-up, and also the local communities of the rural areas where you wouldn't go otherwise, if not with an Interrail free ticket.
No.
Those also benefit from the EU, and they also can vote for a change.
So what's coming out of the panel, it seems to be, is there's 2 things. So one, it's about communicating better. You feel that that's a sort of fundamental thing. And then secondly, João, you were saying being more effective with how resources are spent, not necessarily spending more, but being smarter in how that money is then spent. I want to close. I'm going to put like a final word to everyone on the panel, but with quite a pessimistic young person here, Mate, who says he doesn't intend to vote. He says, how can you expect people to participate in something they do not have a voice in? So he feels very pessimistic.
It's ridiculous, in fact, because they can make a choice. There are parties who want to break down Europe. There are parties who are really more in a liberal way or a more socialist way.
Yes.
So there is so much to be voted. This is with the nose down. I can't understand the guy.
No.
If he is so committed, he should go and vote. This is a free choice.
Okay.
It has to stay like that.
Laura, what would you say to Mate?
I would say, well, it starts with yourself. Take up your own future, and every vote counts. So I would definitely keep the tone positive. Yeah, and I think the challenge for the European Union is to make itself relevant every day and better communicate on all the great things they're doing to convince those young people of the benefits, and not just on the rainy days, but also on the sunny days.
Giuseppina, young people don't have a voice?
Well, I would say that I agree generally, Matej, but still go out, vote inform yourself, vote for what you deem the least worst of all, and then just engage with them, and I'm sure that you will have a voice after this.
João?
I think Matej addresses a very important aspect that was not discussed, but maybe for another time, which is the democratic deficit in the EU, or the perceived democratic deficit. I just hope that Matej looks in the people that he can elect in his country for people that propose concrete measures to reform the EU in the next term of the European Parliament, and to increase the perception that people have about this democratic deficit by making the EU a bit more democratic, maybe.
Okay, those are final words. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but we've run out of time, I'm afraid. I'd like to thank our panel very much for joining us here, and thank you very much for watching. If you want to continue the debate, please log in to debatingeurope.eu. You can add further comments and questions, which we will put to policymakers and experts on this topic and others. Thank you very much for watching, and please, it's not too late to vote, so if you aren't registered to vote yet, please do so. Thank you very much.